All right, since we do have a quorum, we will go ahead and proceed with our special meeting. We'll go ahead and call this meeting order at 6 p.m. If we can start with a moment of silence, please. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if I can remind everybody to either turn off your phones or to silence them so that we don't have any disruptions during the meeting. If the meeting will take roll call, please.
Councilmember Williams.
Present.
Reed. Here. Jackson. Waller.
Here.
Lanu.
Here.
Williamson.
Here.
And Mayor Snyder.
Here. Do I have a motion to approve of the agenda? City Clerk Geneva?
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Reed. Here. Jackson. Waller.
Yes.
Lanu.
Yes.
Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Snyder.
Yes. Right, we're going to have a public hearing. At this time, we will allow for citizens to make comments on the agenda items only. We just want to make sure that folks are aware that proper decorum is required, that comments are made directly to council as a whole, and that no disparaging remarks are made. So we can invite folks up that would like to speak. You would just state your name and your address, and then we'll give you 3 minutes to speak.
Wow, no microphone. Andrew French, 702 East Erie Street here in Albion, formerly representing Precinct 6. I'd like to speak with regard to the redistricting plan. I've not been as good a citizen of Albion to have seen any sort of proposals, but I would again argue that when redistricting happens, I think it's vital that we preserve the addresses of current sitting council members so that they can continue to represent the council for which they were, the precinct for which they were elected. It also gives the members of those precincts the opportunity to vote with their votes on any re-election coming up. So given the supposed redistricting that would remove Shane Williamson from Precinct 6, his term is up this year, and he would be an alternative candidate can come forward to sit for election and let the people of the precinct make that decision rather than taking that decision away from the precinct members who elected Shane in 2018 to serve in that capacity. Thank you very much.
Anybody else in the gallery that would like to stand and make some comment? Any other members, you have any online that would like to? All right, and we will continue. We will move on to our items for the individual discussion. I have a motion to discuss or approve resolution 2206, an amendment to resolution 2022-04 to set dates and process for the 2022 city council redistricting. Support. So we do have information in front of us. The maps that City Manager Snyder gave us at our meeting prior. And then the new map that was given to us today. So we should all have those in front of us. I just would like to remind our council that to date, we have spent $6,000 of our taxpayers' money in regards to our MMO coaching. And we are committed to yet another $3,000 for this Saturday session for a total of almost $10,000 of taxpayers' money. We as a council have given up 3 of our own Saturdays to attend these sessions. And so I just want to ask you all, do you think that this has been a well-worthy expenditure of taxpayers' money, and has it been worth it to you each individually? When council deliberately goes against what professionals have asked us to do, how should taxpayers view this? We as a council agreed to this training, and we sat in these meetings and agreed to allow our city manager, our city clerk, to handle this responsibility without undue influence, and we agreed to trust them and their expertise to run the city. But we are here taking that responsibility away from them, and we are not the experts. We agreed that we didn't want to bring in undue drama. We agreed that we wanted to be conscientious of our work-life balance, but we're heading into our 3rd hour on this topic, and this does not include the discussion that we will also hold at the regular council meeting. So we all need to be very conscientious, and I hope that we are in regards to perception of our community members. How our actions, our decisions are viewed by the public. So I'm hoping that we are all mindful of this as we proceed forward with this meeting and to figure out how we will proceed as a community with redistricting. So I will turn this over to Councilwoman Reed and Lawler, since they brought this request forward.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. As item agenda 8, I will read the resolution that I wanted to amend, and I will explain further. March 7th, 2022, the Albion City Council will hold a special meeting to review, discuss, and select a simple redistricting plan for those redistricting plan proposals offered by city council members, city administration, or legal counsel Once council sets a single redistricting plan at this special meeting, the city attorney will finalize an ordinance describing that plan for the next regular meeting on March 7, 2022. March 7, 2022, the Albion City Council will vote on the first reading of an ordinance describing the boundaries of the redistricting plan selected for approval at the March 7, 2022 special meeting. March 21st, 2022, the Albion City Council will vote on the second reading of an ordinance describing the boundaries of the redistricting plan selected for approval at the March 7th, 2022 special meeting. March 21st, 2022, the city will publish the required ordinance public notice in the Recorder newspaper edition after the second reading and approval of the ordinance. April 4th, 2022, the city will submit to the appropriate state department or agency the boundary descriptions for its election precincts that follow the boundaries of the new city council district boundaries selected for approval at the special meeting on March 7, 2022. The redistricting ordinance must provide for the earliest and date possible under law for this new city council district boundaries to come into effect. The first paragraph, when I made the first resolution, it was, it had some things in there that council members really didn't like in the first resolution that I wrote. So I was willing to work with the council and take out some things, and we worked together out in public and we got it done. And after that was done, I realized that there was something taken from the city council, and that was to have us to have some input on it. As I did my research, I noticed that the city of Jackson allows council members to bring forth redistricting maps if they choose to. They don't have to, but if they choose to, they can. And I just thought it was a good idea, you know, to let us have some experience at redistricting and how it works. I also did some research with neighboring communities such as Battle Creek and Kalamazoo. So I was just basically out there doing my due diligence and gathering information for something that I was concerned about. And the concern of mine was one day I clicked on something from the Michigan Black Caucus, and they were talking about gerrymandering. I can't explain what it is, but I know what it is. And I can now identify the different things that goes with that. So I am proud of myself for doing my due diligence and going outside of Albion to see what other communities are doing, because that is something that we do, and that's something that we all have done. So I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. So with seeing what Jackson does for their city council, I brought this amendment back to the table to say, hey, you know, maybe when I get the information from the lady in Battle Creek, and she does, they use a tool called Dave's Redistricting Maps. So once I had talked to her, you know, it was a possibility that for me, for a PR for myself, I could say, you know, I actually did this, and it was a goal of mine, and it was important, and I could, you know, probably take it with me to actually say that I did something that I had no idea that needed to be done for our city. So that was the reason for my amendment to this resolution, to say that council members could submit something. So even though I don't have anything tonight, if a council member did want to submit something, I just left it there. Because I did have an intention on doing one myself, but as the time went on, it got shorter, and I wasn't able to meet with the lady in Battle Creek about how she did it and what tools that she did use for it. So I'm just bringing this to council to explain to all of you from my point of view of why I brought the amendment to this resolution. And hopefully it is approved for tonight, and that's just the way I feel, and that's just something that I wanted to give all of us a chance to do, if we chose to. It doesn't say that we have to choose what's before us of a council member, but if a council member wishes to speak, I'm very supportive of any of you to allow you to bring something towards us to discuss. And so that is the reason for my amendment for this resolution.
Councilman Reed, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I do. In talking with Councilwoman Lawler, it came upon me the fact that she felt that she should do something. You have to have two people to agree. And so I felt she should be given the opportunity to. And so I agreed with her, yes, she put my name on there as one. Now, I also did not, well, when we first got the other maps, I mentioned the lack of street names and things like that, so I couldn't see what was happening. When I get calls and I get asked questions, it's my responsibility to be able to answer them, or either to look it up or to find out what's going on, because I am responsible to the people that I am the council person for. So therefore, that is what I did. And so I went to look, and I went to Marshall again. I had a map that had the precincts and had the names and different things like that. But not being the smartest person about those, I decided to continue to look to see what I could find. So I have someone here tonight that I would like to present, because we've talked about it. I've showed him what we're doing, and I have something that I would like for him to present to us too.
So before we do that, or even figure out if that's allowed, does anybody else have questions or comments for Councilwoman Reed or Muller? Yep, Councilman Williamson.
So since we're in discussion on this resolution, at the last council meeting, when we talked about this resolution, the discussion around removing the portion around city council members and outside parties submitting maps was it was unanimously voted out, amended from this resolution. There was a long discussion about it, and there was agreement amongst the 7 of us that we were going to trust city administration, the city attorney, and the city clerk to present us with maps, both using the Dave's redistricting data and the census data, which that is in fact what they did. I do have a question. What's changed? Because we keep fighting the same fight every time. Like we made a decision, we agreed on it unanimously, and then we moved forward. And now between that meeting and this meeting, something's changed. Clearly, someone had a map they wanted to bring to council that they wanted to present. And the only way they could do that is if we amended this resolution to allow that discussion to happen. And then you have to ask, well, why do they want to do that? What would be the point? The maps that were presented were well within the margin of error. They were done by folks that were not city council members. And then you look and you say, oh, that's funny. We don't want to gerrymander, but we want to move a line just so to make sure that one council member gets written out of their precinct. And I think that that's pretty suspicious. And I think that people are owed answers for that. I also think that the methodology around how this is done should be talked about. I also would like to know what the cost of the city is going to be. You can't tell from the map how many different blocks and things are going to be affected, but there's going to be a heavy lift. That's going to be a financial burden to the city to be able to certify those blocks and voters and get those numbers done. And then I think this really calls into question the ethical and moral character of council members. We seem to get in one room and say one thing and get in another and do absolutely the opposite. And that's what we're doing tonight, because now for the 3rd time in a row, when we've talked about these types of gotcha moments, we brought the resolution back from the dead. We passed it, we moved forward with the process, and we're reviving it for someone who had they call it due diligence, but I call it being sneaky, plan to bring to council that just conveniently, coincidentally writes people out of their precinct. So I question the motives and aims of the folks who are bringing this map and then which is driving this resolution tonight. It's very clear what you're doing.
So kind of going along with that, there are several in this 3rd map. There are several neighborhoods that are going to be moved. With that, I think we have to take into consideration as well how much is this going to cost the city? How much work is this going to entail? So, City Clerk Domingo, can you or Colin?
Well, I just wanted to, just as I guess a point of procedure, I think
we're getting a little too far into the second agenda item before we resolve the first, because realistically, the council shouldn't be discussing the three options until you discuss whether you're gonna even add the third option. Right now, what you've got before you is just the resolution to whether you're gonna consider a third option.
Yes.
I also think that if the city council member who offered the map should be the one doing the justification and explanation for the map. We didn't say outside council, we didn't say outside consultants, we said city council members could submit the map. And so city council members should be the ones, if you're going to bring a map, please be the one to justify it and show us your work.
I don't know if anybody can say so.
So any other questions or comments before we take a vote on this? Councilwoman Lawler?
Yes, I would like to answer the question, that was, put before me about why, the changes to this amendment, and it clearly states in bullet number 1, why I wanted to do it, and I did, tell, of why, I wanted to amend this for, at this time, and it was because, like I said, once I had gotten information from the city of Battle Creek about how they do theirs and how they use their tool, that it will be a PR for me to say I have done it. I will be proud to have say I've done it. And that is the reason for the change for this resolution. I wanted an opportunity to see how it goes, because I never know what may happen in the next 10 years, but for me to submit something and to say that a city council member can, just to put that in there, to say a city council member can put something in. It's not nothing sneaky. Neighboring cities have done this, so I don't think that they're being sneaky, so I don't see why this word is being used. And that is just my statement. Hopefully that this amendment passes tonight, because it does give us a chance to be engaged. Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Oh, there's a question about why maybe we're using the word sneaky tonight, and I think I just want to respond to that because I'm the one who used it. At the last meeting where we were talking about roads, there was an open violation of the OMA because there was some distribution of maps that weren't given to all of council at that meeting. It wasn't in the public record, it was just laid on certain council members' desks, maps of the precincts. And I kind of let that go, things happen. But when asking Councilmember Reed on her way out of the meeting last week, I said, what's going on with the map? She said, you'll see.
No, I didn't.
So if that doesn't show you the sneakiness behind some of this, that's what we're doing here. So this resolution is bringing forward the opportunity to bring a map that is supposedly drawn by a council member that will have repercussions.
That is not true what he just said. And when I was talking about, I wanted to see the streets, I wanted to know more because I didn't know, and from the little ones that we had, I couldn't tell. I brought that out in council, it's even in the minutes. And so what I did was when the gentleman from the county spoke, and he said where he was from. And I don't know if he showed a map or what, but anyway, I went and got the maps myself because I had been talking with different ones that were saying they didn't quite understand either because of that. So I went and got the maps myself. And no, I didn't get one because I had not talked with them. So if that's what you're talking about, but you just sit there and lied when you said that I told you.
Councilman Reed.
Okay, well, anyway, he did not tell the truth about that.
But that was the case, correct, when you handed out the maps?
I didn't hand them out. All of them got theirs before they came except for Nora. She was not here, remember?
Yes,
She
you handed
was not here.
it, you
And I
placed it
thought she
on
was
her.
going to come in
tabletop.
after the meeting had started. So I just went over and laid this down, face down at her seat.
Mhm.
And when she didn't come in, then I went and got it to take to her or give it to her.
But
when
you also
I
gave
saw
one
it.
to Councilwoman Lawler, correct?
What?
You gave a copy of those maps to Councilwoman Lawler as well?
Yeah,
Yeah, and then you gave one to Mayor Pro Tem Jackson, but she wasn't here.
Yeah.
So you took hers back?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you did give them
But
out.
I was not passing them out to the council.
That's right,
Because
that's the
purchased those
violation.
myself.
Point of order.
I think we're getting a little.
And just have a moment of clarity, I have a
Please
question.
give us a
Is it a
legal
violation of the Open Meetings Act to, as long as you're not deliberating a matter, is it a violation of the Open Meetings Act?
If you're asking me, handing out maps to specific council people in and of itself constitutes a violation of the Open Meetings Act, probably not. It would depend on whether or not those maps were subsequently used for an out of public meeting discussion regarding redistricting. If that occurred, that could be an Open Meetings Act, but the handing out of maps itself is not an OMA violation.
Thank you.
City Clerk Domingo? So, I'm sorry, we should say, we are voting as to whether or not we are going to accept the amendment to the resolution.
If we're going to accept
The amendment.
the amendment.
Councilmember Williams,
Yeah.
Reed,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Waller,
Yes.
Lanu,
Yes,
Williamson.
No.
And Mayor Snyder.
No. Motion to approve the discussions of the proposed plans.
It's just discussion and information.
so moved. Oh,
No,
you
it's
said,
just discussion, yeah.
sorry, missed that. Point of order, Mayor Snyder, we're not allowed to have our electronic devices during the meeting, are we? I thought that was part of our rules of
That was a
procedure.
councilwoman thing.
No, it's part of our rules of procedure. There's no electronic discourse or private discourse during our meetings.
I have it on, I can look at it for time, and you kind of.
I can see that you're texting during
I'm
the
not,
meeting.
that's an accusation, she's just.
No, we've had this
This is-
discussion.
We also had a discussion about the adoption ones at council, but here you
All right,
are.
so let's make sure all of our electronic devices are put away. So we're ready to leave this discussion.
Sure. So the first two maps that you've got in your packet were put together. The first one you've seen before, I'll start with that one, just so the council's clear, that software, or excuse me, that map, which is noted as software option one, was done using the Dave's redistricting software. Just to walk you through the changes, you can see there's a small shift from precinct 1 to 2. That is the pink box at the southeast end of 1 that moves into the northeast section of 2. There's then a section of precinct 3 that is in the northeast corner of 3 that kind of shifts up to the southern part of 2. And then there are 2 sections of 5 that are marked in purple. Those would shift both to precinct 4. And then we move just a small section of 6 into 3, which is marked in yellow. Probably what we would say, just to make it a little bit less awkward of a shape with that first map, and I'll get into it when we get to the second map, is just add the abutting section of the river there. That's technically a census block. There's obviously no population in it because it's the river. We don't have anybody living on the river. But just for the sake of the shape, we probably just add it on. But what that first option gives you is the resulting populations by precinct. And just so the council's aware, the target average that you're looking for is 1283 per precinct. The way that you get that number is you take the total population of 7,700 and divide it by the total number of precincts, which is 6. So that gives you 1283. I mean, realistically, it's 1283 and a third, but around down to 1283. So what that gives you for overall population, and you can see it on page 6 of the special meeting packet, is 1277 for precinct 1, 1307 for 2, 1285 for 3, 1278 for 4, 1274 for 5, and 1279 for 6. So it gets it pretty darn close. You're less than 2% deviation between the precincts. I want to say it comes out to roughly 1.7%. So you're well under the maximum. The other thing to keep in mind is you can see that the shifts of the blocks are very minimal. There were two reasons we did that. One, we didn't want anybody to lose their seat. We didn't want this to become a politicized process. And so we did them in a way that we didn't want anybody to lose their seat. The other thing is, for every block that gets shifted, the clerk has to notify every voter that also maybe happened to be found in those blocks. Keep in mind, these blocks are strictly population. They don't necessarily, it's not just voters. So the clerk has to adjust the QDF file, which is a qualified voter file for every voter in those blocks. And for each block that you move, it's more work for the clerk. And basically they've got to go out and identify each individual address to get the voters. So that's map number 1. Moving on to map number 2, it's very similar. The only changes are you still have that southeastern portion of 1 moving to 2. That's the pink block. In precinct 3, again, the northeast section of 3 moves up to 2. It removes one of the other blocks that was on there. And then the precincts that shift from 5 to 4, instead of using the northern section of, instead of taking the northwest blocks from 5 and shifting them to the north part of 4, we just use the southern blocks from 5 and shifted them to the eastern part of 4. I think it keeps the shapes pretty similar to what they are right now. Again, with the second configuration, all city council members keep their seats. The deviation's a little bit different than the first map. I want to say it takes it to about 2.3%. The resulting populations are 1277, 1288, 1310, 1278, 1274, and 1279. Again, your target number is 1283, so you're pretty close on all of those. Unquestionably, I can tell you if I had time, I could probably adjust the numbers and get them closer. But the problem is there's only so many different permutations you can do with and have everybody keep their seat. Because realistically, the sections that you're going to move are sections that reflect the different precincts. And so when you do those, you've only got so many options until you start removing people from their seat. And that was something we didn't want to do. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the maps, option 1 and 2 that we put together.
Mayor Pro Tem Jackson.
Yes, question, I seen a map, I think it was one of yours that it had on there in precinct 6. Is there in that little corner that's up here? There's no population right there.
I'm sorry, I can't see what you're.
And a little part that kind of jumps out.
I believe that's the 425 area.
Is that here in 6? Okay. Now, in our regular map, isn't that in precinct 5 right now?
No, that's in
It's
6
not.
right now.
That's in 6, it is in 6 right now?
Yes.
Because I think a map, one of the maps had it, that it was in there.
Yeah, I always thought it was associated.
Yeah, I seen it in one of the maps.
Isn't this Forest Street right here?
I mean, I was just wondering when we made that change, why did it go into 6? That was my question. Because I seen a map, Colin, that it had, that was in precinct 5.
I can tell you, I'm looking at, right now, I'm looking at Dave's redistricting, and it's got it in 6. I've never put a proposal forward that I can recall where I moved the 425 area.
Okay, I mean, I've seen one and I left, I left. Okay. And then the numbers that you said are 1283, correct?
That would be your target average, yes.
Target number 1283, 2.3%.
On option 2 would be 2.3.
Option 2,
Yes.
Option 2. I want to get the just of 1. 2.3%, and then what is it on option 1?
It's less than 2%. I think it's right around 1.7.
1.7?
I think if you round up, I think it's 1.7. It's definitely less.
1.7, and what
Kelly's
is,
nodding yes, so I'll defer to her.
okay, so what are the numbers looking like, Kate? In that,
I'm sorry.
I think Haley was saying something. What are the numbers looking like in 1?
It's a 1.7 deviation for option 1. It takes it to 1327 for 1. No, that's correct. I'm
No.
sorry. So if you do the change, it's 1277 for 1, 1307 for 2, 1285 for 3, 1278 for 4, 1274 for 5, and 1279 for 6.
Okay, so we looking like a 20, is it at 20 to 30 people different in all of them? Except precinct 3 is still a big number.
No, precinct 2 is still.
Precinct 2 is the biggest or still 3 in that,
It's 2.
in 1, okay.
Precinct 2, the precinct 2 would have the biggest deviation at 24 people more than the other precincts, but 24 people is still a very small number of people when you're talking about 7,700 people.
Okay, now what about the deviation in 2?
So the deviation in 2,
It's 2.3.
I got the 2.3, but what
wait, are you talking
about
about option 2 or are you talking about precinct?
option 2?
So option 2, I'm gonna take it to 1277 for 1, 1288 for 2, 1310 for 3, 1278 for 4, 1274 for 5, and 1279 for 6.
So I don't see where I got the number 1310, so that's still roughly what, 20 some people? or-
27 people over the target.
I want to make sure I get the just so we can get it on. That, I could have sworn we had, you had 3 now. You had 3 options.
There was, at a previous meeting, we had different maps that were not using the software. That might be what you're thinking of.
Okay, all right.
So
So
Bill
those,
Pro Tem Jackson, I see in this one that
uh-huh,
was brought forth. That part, it's in 5.
yeah, but I seen it on one that had, yeah, it had like a pinkish color or something or whatever. And then maybe it might have been the one that I was looking at for the, from the state or whatever. But I seen.
I don't think I've ever presented a map that had the 425 area.
Yeah, I've seen that in there, so maybe I've seen it from somewhere else, so.
And the 3 maps that were presented at the previous study session, those were not using the Dave's redistricting. These 2 maps have utilized that software, and then we verified the numbers with the county up and down to match our total population. So these are the 2 recommendations that we're bringing forward to council.
So what I would recommend the council is, I mean, you've got 2 options just for the sake of giving, at least with these 2 options, you've got 2 options just for the sake of having more than one choice. I would recommend option 1 because it's got the lower deviation. It keeps everybody in their current seat, and there's a minimum of modifications for the clerk to make as it relates to QBF 5.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Jackson. When I was studying the map last night, what I didn't like is when I had to continue to keep taking my eyes everywhere. And I mean, like, say for instance, I'm gonna say option 2. What I kept looking at is how blue, so in 3, that area that is shaded blue, correct?
Yeah,
That would go over into 2.
correct.
Okay. And the yellow, I guess when I seen it, I see one time I seen you had it where it was jumping. 5, okay. Blue goes over to 2, okay, that's not as bad as I thought. And then 1, that corner goes over to 2. And I had to look at another map because I wanted to see exactly your square,
Sure.
what street it was.
Yeah, and that's why if you look on the written portion that accompanies the map, I tried to describe by street name. So you could see what the street boundaries were for the parts that were moving. Because, you know, as Councilwoman Reed indicated, you know, some of the maps here, I mean, and honestly, this is how they print, unless you print them on the giant thing, so not being able to read the streets, that's why I provided the street names, so you could kind of, you could get an idea of where the boundaries are.
Is there a number that the state is requiring that we should have?
Realistically, and you're gonna, I wanna say it's like 10%, but we're so far under that, I mean, we're nowhere near that. I think 10% is what Battle Creek uses. But the clerk's nodding yes, so. We're well under what our maximum deviation would be.
When I came this afternoon, I told the assistant city manager that I was having someone that I would like to present. So is that, can that be done?
And who is this person and what are the credentials?
Pardon?
Who is this person and what are their credentials?
Robert George. He is an Albion College graduate. He's dealt with maps and things before, and he has, I've looked him up to help me with this because I really was having some problems getting it all laid out like it should have been. So I asked him if he would come and if he would present to us what he saw from what we're doing.
So he's a
So,
current college
He's right
student?
there.
He's a current college student?
No, he's not.
Isn't that what you said? He's a college.
Graduate.
He's going to tell you who he is. So if we could have him come.
Well, what is his expertise on this?
Pardon?
What is his expertise on this?
He knows me.
So we do probably need a majority vote from council to allow this, is this correct?
I think the council can, I mean, it's whether or not to allow a speaker. Let me check our council rules here real quick. If I'm not mistaken, I think the council rules allow for members of the public to be to assist. While I'm looking this up, if anyone else have questions about the first two maps?
Attorney Harkness, I was curious about precinct 6 giving precinct 3 the portion that you allocated. Because I don't think the first few maps had that, so I was curious about how that came up.
Well, again, the first few maps, we're not using the software, so the numbers changed. Realistically, I would tell you, I think you can get away without moving that at all, because if you don't move that, that particular final shift is 38 people. So if you work backwards, that would be, I mean, I think realistically it puts both. The reason that we added it was it put the numbers closer. Without it, 6 is high and 3 is low. I think 3 was sitting around somewhere in the 1260s there. 6 was, without moving that block, 6 was at 1317. And then when you take that off, it drops 6 down to 1279. It takes 3 from 1266 up to 1304. So I think you could get away without moving it in terms of 6, but you're gonna have a bigger deviation because 6 would be sitting at 1317 and 3 would be sitting at 1266. That move, but when you add it, it takes it up to 1304, which is obviously 13 less. then 13, 17, and 6 was City Connect. So it closes your gap by 13 people between the two precincts.
Okay.
That's why we added that. The reason that we landed on that particular spot was if you go further south of the river, the problem is the way that the census did their census blocks, because it's basically one giant census block south of the river that would be impractical to move because it would basically be the entire southern part of 6. In terms of going north of it, we didn't think it would make sense to do the blocks right at the corner of 6 and 3 because those, the ones on the other side of Superior Street are moving up to 2. I guess hypothetically, we could check the blocks that are south of that and north of what we're proposing, but I just thought it would look weird having one tiny little block carved out to be part of 2, as opposed to a larger, more geographically significant block that had the population that we did.
Thank you.
Sure. I think realistically it's up. I don't see it in here, but I think the council can invite members of the public to assist with materials that have been provided to council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councilwoman.
Would you give them your bio?
Yes, certainly. I've got a handout here for everybody.
So if we can, I know,
Yes, keep it.
yeah, keep it
Sure.
for like a few minutes, because we still have to have.
Yes, of course, of course. Just my brief bio. I graduated Albion College in 2019. I work for the Michigan Labor Sister Council as the Director of Advocacy, handling municipal affairs for the Michigan laborers across the state. So I work with cities and counties. Insofar as my experience working with maps and redistricting, I've been involved with several good governance groups across the state that were involved heavily in the 2020 state level redistricting process for the independent commission, as well as at the county commission level with several different counties that I had a direct hand in drawing, aiding those commissions in drawing their maps. So that is a brief bio for me. Yeah.
You don't have to look at that.
So you've got my bio there on the front. Insofar as how I came about this, I was contacted through Councilmember Reed that she was looking for some assistance in the redistricting efforts here in the city of Albion. And she had been informed of my past work both in Calhoun and in Southwest Michigan, as well as across the state, and had asked me to take a look at the map. She had shown me the maps that the city's attorney had drafted, and asked if there were any improvements could be made, and I kind of got to work. Before we kind of get to that, just governing, because it's been alluded to in the meeting, the rules and the laws regulating city apportionment for wards are not nearly as clearly defined as at the state or the county commission levels. So you've got there the excerpt and the packet from the Home Rule Act of 1909 that talks about the population of each city subject is determined from the census. Obviously, that just occurred. As the city's attorney noted, the current population of the city. And then you've got the excerpt from the Home Rule Act that refers directly to the reapportionment of wards that they need to be as nearly equal population as is practical and contiguous and compact. That is how I drew these maps to meet the population standard as well as to ensure contiguity and the highest level of compactness. As we go through the packet here, it's got the overall amount of people per ward at the target number. It's got the edits made there, which is the same map as Councilmember Reed provided earlier. It's got the more detailed areas of the city that are moving between wards. And it's also got the specific deviation for each individual ward with an overall map deviation of 0.78%, less than 1%. And then as you go, just a reminder about the importance of contiguity and compactness, as well as the target to try and have as close to equal population. Obviously, that is both law as well as a general good target to aim for, with each individual vote above or below the individual targets for each municipality. The impact of that individual voters, of those voters in those wards, is either increased or diminished. So we want to try and maintain equality and equity across the board there. And then on the last page, you've got the overall population deviation there in the charts. And then we also have several compactness scores, which I wanted to spend just a quick second on. We've got the REOC and the Polsby-Popper compactness scores there, showing comparisons between Councilmember Reed's map and the two maps that his attorney produced. Those two scores have been used in several cases, most recently in the League of Women Voters versus Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, 2017-2018, when the Supreme Court there struck down the map at the time as a gerrymandered map, and part of the reasoning that they mentioned was using the Polsby-Popper metric. As you can see, a higher score there is better in both of those. Those two scores are they become commonplace in the political science world. They are basically calculated through some complex geometry and algebraic equations. I've got some definitions here if folks if they're interested in them. But generally speaking, the higher the score, the more compact it is. And that's a big, that's in contrast to, you see it and you think it is compact, whereas we've got analytics here to actually prove that districts are more or less compact. So we've got some metrics there. And so that is the entirety of my presentation. Try to run through that very quickly.
Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mayor Senator. Mr. George, you mentioned the impact on residents and the consideration of that. Can you just speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, the goal of trying to have the closest to zero population target when there are more voters in a ward than the other wards, their votes, if you just take a systematic math calculation to it, that their votes are worth less because there are more of them in those wards. So the idea of trying to get to zero, as the attorney mentioned, there really isn't a defined legal statute that says the proportional deviation between wards like there is for the county commission. It's very defined. There's a court case that refers to it. At the state level and at the federal level, there are very distinct numbers, but at the city ward level, there's not that number. So there is flexibility there, but from a good governance standpoint, we want to try and get to zero, as close to zero as you can. At the congressional level, for instance, they try to get within 1% of the exact deviation per congressional district.
Thank you.
I forgot to ask you to bring did you bring this group to be shown?
Yes, I could show that if you would like, if you'd like to see the
No,
maps.
actually, I'm very conscientious of our time here, so any other questions or comments?
It would be good for the people to see it.
But do you have any other handouts that can be given?
I do have a couple more handouts. I do have my computer here that I can put it on the screen.
Yeah.
If there's a technical composition, but I'm aware of time constraints as well.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we do have to be mindful of our time since we have our next meeting at 7. So wasn't there packets given out with the new maps?
No.
I only have 2 extras.
Okay. So we do need time for public comment, but that's part of our process as well before 7 o'clock.
But that's what I'm saying, if the people at home could see this, we here have it, but they don't have it. Those people out there can't see it either. I don't think it would take them that long to go through it. It's just the
Mr.
pictures
Clerk,
of
could you
the
provide those
different.
two extra copies if it's not-
Yeah.
And then Mayor Snyder, is it possible for him to project his computer on the screen?
How do we do that in any manner?
You've got 6 minutes left and you still have to get through the rest of your.
Yes. You can email it to the clerk
Oh,
for the next meeting.
that would work. Could he email it? Can we email that?
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
For our upcoming.
And then if I could just have a quick closing, if that's good, unless there are more questions.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And so far as I know, it came up, that discussion just a second ago about the impact it has on the city clerk. I think that the voters of the state of Michigan, including the voters of the city of Albion, have indicated that they want districts that uphold the values of our general good governance mantra. Insofar as at the state level redistricting, there were a lot of complaints that folks made about the impacts of the increased workload on city clerks and so forth with the new district lines, because they did not follow existing dogma when it came around to keeping a lot of the districts within municipalities, looking at communities of interest and making sure that the districts satisfy the other constitutional criteria were much higher. Now, obviously, that does not necessarily apply in this case, but I think it is important to keep in mind when you're looking at the general sentiment at the broader overall targets of trying to get to as compact as equally population districts as possible, is that the general spirit of that we're looking at. So that's everything I wanted to close on. Thank you for your time.
So we do need to move on to public comment.
Information, discussion of group redistricting plan.
I'm sorry, what was that? Councilman?
Discussion of approval of single redistribution proposal.
Councilman Williams, what was your question?
Is it, what do we have to do for that? Because that's on the agenda.
Number 3.
Yeah,
Let us
so
see, yeah.
the motion to approve the single redistricting plan.
They have to choose one and, yeah.
So I guess I would like to make a motion to approve option number 1, since it has the 1.7% deviation. It has way less movement in regards to neighborhoods going into the districts. I just think that in regards to being conscientious again of taxpayer funds that are gonna have to go into this process, time. To me, that makes the most sense in regards to moving forward with this whole process.
She made the motion.
I made a motion to approve,
Another question. Councilmember Waller?
but should I get a support on this or before we move questions?
Well, I guess it depends on whether there's a question about the motion or not. Is it about the motion?
It is about, I got a question about the law.
Okay.
So am I allowed,
I guess.
or is it?
I guess it could arguably be about the motion.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, did I hear that the law says that we have to get to the closest deviation as possible? And if we choose any of the other maps that are 1.7 or 2.3, that it could come back to court to say that that was not adequate, and we have to choose something that is at least zero, the 0.7. Am I saying that right?
So I know what you're asking, and so let me tell you this. The only provision in the state statute for it to be challenged is if the city adopts a map and a registered voter wants to challenge the map, they can do so within 30 days to say whether or not it meets the requirement of state law and the Constitution of Michigan or the US. So basically to say, hey, is this map meeting the requirements of the law? What it says about the redistricting is it says the wards are as nearly equal population as is practicable and contiguous and compact. Now, what is practicable is a matter of interpretation. That does not always mean the smallest number. It means getting to a number that's at an acceptable number where you're getting towards your target number, but it's not going to be exact. And practical means, what is it going to take to get there? What makes sense? So what I would say to you is the general number used by most municipalities in Michigan is 10%. You are well under that. Your options, your outside option is 2-point-some%, which is way under that. So if you're asking me if you have to select option 3, my interpretation of the statute would be no, you do not.
So is that what Act 279, 1909 states?
What I was just saying to you is what I just read from the section of the Home Rule City Act that you just referenced. It says it's nearly as practicable, compact, and contiguous. What is practicable is a matter of interpretation. I don't think that is in all instances going to be the smallest number.
I have a motion, and a line of support.
Support.
Questions or comments? City Clerk Camino. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Remember.
Councilmember Reed,
State what you're asking for.
So we are voting on whether to move forward with the first map that has the 1.7 deviation.
Councilmember Reed,
No,
Jackson,
No,
Lawler,
No.
Lanu,
No,
Williamson,
Yes.
Williams,
No.
and Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
So one thing that I want the entire council to be aware of, several members of council during this process contacted me with their concerns about redistricting people out of their precincts. So as you review what plan you're gonna adopt tonight, I would ask you to keep that in mind, because if it was a concern for some of you individually, I would certainly think that it would be a concern for your colleagues. I think something to keep in mind. You can ultimately, vote whichever way you want to vote, but in light of all the training the council has had, I think it would be a very disingenuous route to take in wanting to make sure we're individually not redistricted out and then voting to redistrict someone else. So the maps that were prepared by the staff ensure that you're well within a sound margin of error. close to the 1283 number and keeps everybody in. So
I would say, and looking at number 3, it's the closest of them all. Now, is there another motion or something? I make a motion that we adopt that number 3.
Support.
Questions or comments? City Clerk, yeah, Councilman Lucy.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Harkness, wasn't Councilmember Lanu one of the ones who originally expressed concern about being, written out of her district?
there were several members that contacted me about concerns about being written out of the district. I don't want to address any specific comments about individual council members, but I was contacted by multiple council members about being concerned about being redistricted out. And so the plans that you have before you, prepared by the administrations, were specifically designed to get to that nearly as practical number and still have everybody maintain their seat to make sure that this process was not politicized.
Maybe motion, she's second.
City Clerk, Domingo?
Councilmember Chance,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Lanu,
Yes.
Williamson,
No.
Williams,
Yeah.
Reed,
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
No. Okay, now we're open to public comment. Just have 3 minutes to come forward. Proper decorum is required, no disparaging comments. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Alicia Priani. I live at 310 East Michigan Avenue in Albion, Michigan. And I have a question regarding the map that you just voted on. When he did the calculations, did he take into consideration the fact that we have a shrinking population of approximately 4% of people each year? So if we do, then those numbers aren't gonna be correct. I mean, there needs to be some forecasting and some predicting in this before you just start running rampant with some map. Number 2 of the things that concern me is that more of my district is being turned into downtown. When we have an empty downtown, we have a North Superior Street that isn't thriving. And to add more businesses to Michigan Avenue at this moment in time does not make sense at all. It really doesn't. We're not filling up downtown. We're kind of shifting over to Michigan Avenue. And it really impedes the people who live there. We lose our peace and quiet. All of a sudden we get traffic. All of a sudden we get beep, 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 because somebody has a new business on the block, which is outside. I had my house attempted broken into the first time in 6 years. They smashed one of my cameras. I had to replace my front door because of the attention that some things bring. So there's things to take into consideration and just like steam voting forward. I mean, like you just went through this like, woohoo, we're gonna do this without any more data than a college kid from Albion College with some experience politically has. So, yeah, I question the algorithm that he used. I would have liked to have seen some sort of substantial evidence that his numbers and stuff are correct, that's even correct. I mean, it's just somebody's word. It's somebody's word against somebody else's word. There's nothing there of any substantiation, nothing. So, thank you very much. Have a great night.
Andrew French, 702 East Erie Street in Albion. I can't say enough how disappointed I am in this council. You know, we talk on a national level and a state level about gerrymandering and the fact that we want nonpartisan people engaging in deciding where boundaries are drawn for representation. And what we see, what has happened tonight, is that a council person who has served one term, who expressed opinions that were against the majority of the council, has been eliminated from serving the community because 4 of you decided that you didn't want him on the council and you could use a political tool and turn it into a political. You took away the opportunity for others to vote him out or to provide him support for his views and his opinions on this council. When I served on this council not 4 years ago, we had great differences of opinion. And we saw how toxic that could be, but we took action on things that were of importance to the city. And we listened to every constituent, regardless of their background, regardless of their wealth or economic status, regardless of their color or their orientation or what have you. We represented our precinct. And what has happened to the 6th precinct today is that you have taken away our representation. You are now demanding that somebody else who didn't run for election 4 years ago, someone else is going to have to step up. And we were very happy with Shane. And to take that representation away from us is not American. It's not. It's not what this Constitution said, that we should be able to elect our own representation, and you've taken that away because you didn't like the way he stood on issues that were important to you. And I don't know where America is going. I don't know where the city of Albion is going when council members can turn an apolitical mechanism into a political one. And I worry for our city.
Hello, council members. I'm Clifford Harris at 411 Elizabeth Street. You've taken away my vote by a last minute proposal. We all saw, when did the official proposal come out? Was that February sometime? The other one was made public. So everybody had a chance to look at it, say small changes. No need to worry about this. So instead of the 5 hours before the choice is made, a radical change is made, it might be a really good one. We don't know. Nobody in the city's had a chance to look at it. Most people in the city don't even know what's happening. So you've taken away our vote. You've taken away our chance to make our own choices. You disenfranchised the 6th district with most of them having no idea about it. I hope you're proud of yourselves. This was a travesty of ours.
Hi, Karen Hamilton, and I'm also at 411 Elizabeth and also a member of the 6th district. And I'm going to keep my comments short because I'm going to echo those of my neighbors who feel like my vote has been taken away and my representation has been taken away by this. And reaffirming that I think everyone had agreed to not redistrict in a way that removed people from their seats. And I don't know why that changed, but I'm disappointed by that as well. Thank you.
Anybody else like something? Yeah.
Hi, Leroy Evans, 310 East Michigan, and I do have to say I'm disappointed. You've taken away the vote from the people of the city, especially the 6th precinct. It's hard for me to go hold up my council member, but I can speak to other ones, so I can't do that. And taking away the vote and taking away the vote from the people. I can't say it any better than Mr. French or anybody else did from out here. I hope everyone's proud of yourself. I'm just sad and disappointed.
Anybody else like to come forward? And motion to adjourn?
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Snyder.
Yes, special meeting adjourned 7:13 PM.
Can we do a 5-minute recess between meetings?
5 minutes, please. Be back here at 20 after, please.
I mean, realistically, process.
Can I really? Just sorry about
Like this, we think about the sort of way that the chart reads. So when the chart. That was considered a question.
So these, I will love
Don't worry, I'll be here.
And there's plenty of things. You were talking about how allows them to be voted on.
It will, it'll get in the.
So what is
Yeah, so what happens is that, you know, we're language has to get, so actually has to go. This will, yes,
Any regular election. So it would be, we have a first reading, second reading, March 20th. If there was a regular
You could join.
You can have that. I'm more than willing. to-
Jill, I think we should just start the second one as our other committees meeting. Instead of the other meeting.
Highs and lows.
I can't tell for sure, but my hope is that.
Yeah.
Certainly.